The case of 18-year-old Skylar Richardson has become one of the most resonant in the history of the United States. A blonde cheerleader from the town of Carlisle secretly gave birth, burned, and then buried the child in the garden. Sounds like a bad horror movie script. Despite the fact that prosecutors and the public considered it a crime, the monster of the 21st century was found innocent. The middle of spring 2017 will forever remain in the memory of Skylar Richardson. She is a beautiful blonde and part-time cheerleader, the most popular girl in her senior year, driving around the city of Carlisle in her own convertible. She has a well-to-do family, a beautiful home, a slender figure honed by 6 years of bulimia and anorexia. There is also a pumped-up boyfriend, Brandon, and progressive parents. It would seem that with such a portfolio, she has a direct path to one of the Ivy League universities. But instead of a prestigious university, an 18-year-old girl ended up in prison. The district police charged her with the murder and burning of her own child. In the summer of 2017, when the emaciated Skylar sat silently at the preliminary hearing, Prosecutor David Forshnell read out the charges with an impassive face. Miss Richardson deliberately concealed her pregnancy. Miss Richardson secretly gave birth to a child, killed him, and burned him. Miss Richardson buried the remains of a lifeless baby under the cover of night. Miss Richardson did all these shenanigans right after the prom. Miss Richardson is an egotistical scion from a wealthy family, obsessed with an ideal life, and she must be punished adequately for the crime. No less than a life sentence. Having reported, Forshnell took his place in the courtroom. Skylar Richardson looked back at her mother, hunted. Things were even worse online. Society took up arms against the blonde and daily came up with new details of the shocking crime. During pregnancy, Skylar wrapped her stomach with duct tape so that the child could not grow. First, she threw the baby out of the window, and then cut into small pieces. A little later, she was accused of murdering other children, nephews of her mother's cousin's friends, whom neither the detectives themselves nor Mrs. Richardson had ever met. Skylar's house was occupied. Neighbors tried to get her pictures. Journalists trampled right on the lawn at the front door, and a helicopter of a famous TV channel flew over their cottage several times a week. Everyone wanted to get the details, to find out what the 18-year-old killer looks like today, what she thinks, and what she says. Needless to say, numerous friends and even the guy Brandon turned away from the girl. And many of them joined groups on social networks in which the monster from Ohio was poisoned. Prosecutor Forshnell enjoyed a moment of glory. At one of the numerous press conferences, he told reporters the following: Miss Richardson and her mom are absorbed in the outside of life. They care about their reputation, how they look, their personal ideal picture. Skylar mercilessly burned the child when he was probably still alive. This statement shocked the already pushed to the limit public. All the cards were in his hands. There were still no medical reports. Forensic experts disagreed, and the girl herself was considered by the court as a suspect. But the Conservative Society of Traditionalists from Ohio was unstoppable. The latter, in general, can be called true. From the age of 12, Skylar Richardson was seen by a doctor. She was diagnosed with bulimia, anorexia, and also depressive personality disorder. By the fall of 2019, when after a thorough examination of the case, the court found the girl innocent, no one was interested in the truth. I will mock this creature for the rest of my days. One of the participants of the anti-Skylar group wrote on social networks. In fact, everything was completely wrong. On April 26, 2017, 2 weeks before the prom, Kim Richardson decided to take her daughter to a gynecologist. Usually she didn't interfere in Skylar's affairs, but she was thinking of going to study at the University of Cincinnati. Adult life, boys, sex. Kim knew that her daughter was sleeping with her boyfriend and basically had nothing against it. It's okay to love. You just have to do it safely, she explained to Skylar. At the gynecologist's examination, Kim decided to ask for a prescription for birth control pills. According to the law, the girl herself could not yet purchase them. Skylar was determined to share the news with her mom, but when they drove home in the car, she just couldn't. I was so scared. If I could rewind time, I would definitely admit everything. But then I didn't succeed. I felt guilty. Wrong. Bad. I couldn't tell anyone about my shame. Skylar recalled that moment. Besides, graduation is on the nose. She had already picked up a tight red dress that emphasized her figure so favorably, and also the best night in the world. Adult night. I'll tell you everything after the ball, the girl decided. On May 5, Skylar and her boyfriend Brandon in graduation outfits were photographed at the Richardson house. If you look closely at the cherry dress, you can notice the strangely rounded belly of an 18-year-old cheerleader. But at that moment, everyone reacted differently to the changes in the girl's figure. Since the age of 12, she has struggled with anorexia and bulimia, has always been very thin, but now she seems to be getting in shape. The girlfriends called Skylar a sexy baby and an appetizing curly. Skylar was happy. She danced at the graduation party, but she didn't touch the alcohol that her classmates dragged through. And she hurried home too early. She asked Brandon to accompany her before midnight. What about the coolest night of our lives? He wondered. Skylar kissed him on the cheek. She could not even imagine that it could be childbirth, because she was sure that there were still several months before them. When she was sitting on the toilet, she felt that something was coming out of me. It was a girl. When Skylar realized what was happening, she tried to catch the baby. But she was so slippery, small, covered with amniotic fluid that the girl could not hold the newborn, and dropped it right into the toilet. Skylar hastily picked up the baby and hugged it to her. But she did not cry, did not breathe, and the girl's heart did not beat. Skylar put her hand to her motionless daughter's chest and felt nothing. Sobbing softly, Skylar swaddled the baby. The girl was bleeding, but that was the least of her worries right now. My parents were sleeping downstairs. My younger brother was behind the wall, but it didn't matter now. She can't tell anyone anything anymore. Leaning against the bathtub with her dead daughter in her arms, Skylar realized that the only thing that could be done in this situation was to bury the child. Still crying, Skylar suddenly realized that she hadn't even given her daughter a name. Annabelle, she whispered in the dark. She had no acquaintances with a similar name, so whenever she heard it, she would remember the baby. After laying the little body in the grave, Skylar sprinkled it with earth and put roses from the garden. The next morning she went to school, and everything seemed to be back on track. However, in July she had to go to the gynecologist again. The girl got pregnant again and came for an abortion. The new Dr. Casey Boyce received recommendations from Skylar's previous doctor. He knew that his patient was supposed to have a baby, but instead she came for an early abortion. Something doesn't add up here. The girl confessed everything and cried so much that other patients in the corridor heard her sobbing. Skylar Richardson had no idea that Casey Boyce was legally required to tell law enforcement about any suspicions of child abuse. He fulfilled his duty, and on the same day, an 18-year-old girl found herself in an interrogation room. Without parents and a lawyer, the blonde cheerleader openly told her story and repeated that she would never harm her baby. I didn't kill her. One of the investigators held Skylar's hand, and the other admired her noble desire to bury her dead daughter. For 2 years of continuous stress, the girl ate almost nothing. She lived under house arrest, practically without leaving the house, Only trips to the doctor were allowed, and then under the supervision of the police. It was 2 years of severe depression, recalls Skylar. Every night I went to bed and asked God that I would die that night instead of Annabelle. She withdrew from all social networks, stopped going online, because shocking details about her own case were raining down on her everywhere. Her parents supported her and urged her not to give up. Skylar got up early every morning, cleaned the room, combed her hair, and dressed. I started reading a lot, cooking, knitting, taking care of the house. No matter what, she wanted to live. It was so hard to withstand all this when the whole world was against you. You know the truth and hope to convince the people who are coming at you with knives. Sometimes I wanted to give up. When the trial began, Skylar made a forced confession. Prosecutor Forschnell insisted that the baby was burned, but the suspect denied everything. 17 times the girl repeated that she had not burned anyone. Then the prosecutor referred to the Bible. It's normal to cremate a person after death. Perhaps you just wanted to give your daughter a decent Christian funeral. Confused Skylar, who did not understand where the truth was and where the lie was, nodded. When she said what they wanted to hear from her, the girl was allowed to go home. However, later the medical examiner admitted that there was no fact of burning after all. I felt like I was dying, recalls Skylar Richardson at the time. I listened to the prosecutors say terrible, unthinkable things and put photos of my daughter's bones on the huge screen of the courtroom. Most of it was always occupied by reporters. For the family, there was one row right behind the accused. I coped because lawyers helped me. They told me what to wear, how to hold my head, where to look, how to speak. I was so confused that I trusted them completely. I had almost no strength left. The prosecution offered the girl a choice. In exchange for a guilty plea, she was guaranteed 15 years of strict regime instead of life imprisonment. At first, this idea seemed tempting to Skylar and the lawyers, but then the defendant changed her mind. I wouldn't be able to live by admitting to something I didn't do. Kim Richardson was scared by her daughter's bold decision. I was so scared that I tried to dissuade her. It's good that she didn't listen to me, she later recalled. Nevertheless, for many, Skylar Richardson is still a child killer. She, as before, is being bullied on social networks, and journalists are on duty at the house. I'm still living in fear. It's hard for me to manage bouts of paranoia and panic, Skylar admits. Carlisle is too small a town. Conservative traditionalists live in it. Such a society sometimes needs a detent in the form of a scandal, and the scarier it is, the more interesting it is. In the end, people just need entertainment, and they are especially happy when they can watch a detective series right from their own windows, explained Representative Skylar Richardson. Now Skylar Richardson performs the duties of an assistant to the lawyers who defended her in court. No one else decided to hire such a famous person. She waters the plants, cleans and performs small tasks of lawyers. Work has given me a purpose in life. Colleagues treat me with respect, with sympathy. I feel like a human being again, Skylar shared. She is struggling with an eating disorder. She has a long way to go because over the past 2 years her condition has deteriorated significantly. When I couldn't control my life, I tried to control my body. I had no particular reason to take care of myself, so I starved myself and caused vomiting. Psychiatrists diagnosed her with severe depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. Nightmares, obsessive thoughts, insomnia. Kim Richardson often finds her daughter in the middle of the night in the living room. She is watching TV and does not react to anything else. However, the girl is determined to move on. I swore that if I passed this test, I would help all people in a similar situation. I will use my experience to give support to others. Now she is signed up for law lectures at the Institute and will take the bar exams. In October 2019, the family erected a monument to baby Annabelle near the city. It's a relief to know that my daughter is in a better place. I visit her grave every week, says Skylar Richardson. Next to the statue of a tiny angel, the girl leaves roses from her garden every time.